Greetings, book lovers everywhere, and welcome to E-Train Talks. I'm your host, E-Train. I'm a 13-year-old literacy advocate, podcast host, booktuber, and I am on a journey to celebrate all things books. From reading and reviewing stories to talking to authors and book lovers. But today, I get to share what goes on behind the scenes in the world of books. What author doesn't have an agent? And I'm sitting right here with the one and only Anne Rose. All
What?
authors want... Oh yeah, welcome.
Sorry, you caught me off guard. The one and only. It made me sound so fabulous.
Yeah, because you are. So, everybody, we are exploring the world of a literary agent. And imagine getting to spend your days reading and celebrating books, and along with that, being kind of in control. You get to decide if if you want to agent an author or not. You have certain tastes, you have certain tricks, and we're going to learn all about that and more in this interview. So, thank you so much for joining me.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
So, for those who don't know, Anne Rose is an agent at the Tobias Literacy Agency, and the agent to at least two of my favorite authors, Tom Phillips and Sidney Dunlap. She's worked with many, many more as well. And I cannot wait to find out more about what you do, Anne, as the leader of the Rosebuds. For those who are tuning in and don't know what a literary agent actually does, will you shine a light on what your role in the book world is as an agent?
Sure. I actually had this question asked on TikTok the other day, and I probably did a really poor job at responding to that because I answer these questions on my elliptical machine, which is where I do a lot of my work. If you know anything about me, you've seen my social media. So, I mean, I guess like the quick and dirty answer to that is that we are an author's best advocate. So, besides editing books and loving our clients, we also want to we obviously want to champion them. We want to protect them when it comes to contractual rights with publishers. So the publishing contract is set in place not to protect the author, but to protect the publisher. And so it's our job as literary agent to make sure that the author and their rights are protected along the way. So that's the quick and dirty answer to it.
Let's get into the first question.
Excellent.
So, the amazing authors that you agent are known as the Rosebuds. So how did that name come about, and who are some of the authors that you are or have agented?
Excellent question. Okay, so I guess it was Rosebud was pretty easy. Anne Rose.
Yeah.
Rosebud, kind of just like one of those things. We're like a part of like a whole bush of authors, blooming out there. So it was, I don't know, it kind of felt like natural as a way of kind of differentiating ourselves. See, I can't English today either, so we're good. And then Tom was the one that came up with our motto, which is if you mess with the rosebuds, you get the thorns. So I think that also is very fitting because it's a very much a community of writers that I like to have, and they all talk amongst each other and they gang up on me quite often, which is so lovely of them. And so yeah, that's how it came about.
Well, that's amazing. And hopefully one day I get out there and I can start annoying you as well as an author. So, I mean, I also want to write books and all that stuff, but annoying you is another addition.
Excellent. I look forward to it.
All right. So, I talked to a lot of authors, librarians, and even editors, but I've never really had the chance to dive deep into an interview with an agent. So, what was your experience joining the publishing world like? And would you say it's kind of easier or harder than that of becoming an author?
So my way to join the literary world is probably a little bit different. I've told this story a few times, so I don't know if you've heard it before, but I started agenting after I started authoring. So, and the story that is from me becoming an author is basically my niece at the time had called me and said, "Auntie, I want you to read books with me." And she didn't have anyone to read books with. Her friends weren't reading books. And so I said, "Sure, no problem. Just you tell me what to buy. I'll buy the books and we'll read them together and we'll have our own little book club." And so she would tell me what to buy and I would buy it and we'd read it. And it was excellent. And then one day she calls me and she's just crying, crying, crying because her favorite character died. And so as an auntie, of course, what do? I say, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to write you a book." So in that process, I started saying, well, if I'm writing this book, I should probably learn about this thing called publishing, right?
Yeah.
So I started learning about publishing. I got an internship while I was working a full-time job. I did that for several years. And then when my job was eliminated, because that's what happens in the grown-up world, and it's really a bummer, I wanted to stay in publishing. And it kind of serendipitously happened that I was able to kind of transition into an agenting role from there. As whether it's easier or not, I don't think it's easier. I think it's actually,
Mhm.
in some ways, it's kind of harder because it's kind of a way to navigate how you connect with the industry, because I do have this privilege of being an agent and being able to see things from the other side, right? But at the same time, I'm also a writer.
Yeah.
So it's tough because like when the pandemic started, I like lost my writing group, for example. And so as an agent, it's really hard for me to go out there and be like, hey, I want to join a writing group, because I bring something to the table that's a little bit different, and it can make people feel uncomfortable because they're sharing work in a writing group that isn't polished, right?
Right.
So it makes it a little tricky and tough in that regard. So did I answer your question? Because I'm actually not exactly sure. I kept rambling.
No, you did. You did. Thank you. So I also just love that word serendipitously. I guess you learned some good words as an agent.
Yeah.
You really you pulled that out of there. Like you got a lot of words in your wheel box. I think that's a term. I don't know. I don't know all those old people terms.
It is now. So
Yeah, it
we'll
is
pull it
now.
out of the wheel box. It'll be perfect.
Something like that. And so you've kind of dabbled in both, as you mentioned. You're both an author and an agent. And so what would you say the biggest challenge for a debut author is when trying to submit their first manuscript? And what is the single, I know this is going to be a tough one, what is the single most important piece of advice that you can offer anyone out there who has the dream of becoming an author?
Ooh, okay. Well, okay, we're gonna have to break these down question by question. So
All
what was
right.
the first question?
So the first question was, what is the single most important? Okay. What did you say the biggest? What would you say? Okay. What would you say the biggest challenge for a debut author is when trying to submit their first manuscript?
I think the biggest challenge is making your work stand out.
Hmm.
So as an agent, I get probably when I'm open to submissions, I roughly get a over a little 100 or more a week. And
Wow.
so once you average that out, I think it's about 5,000 a year. So I'm reading, yeah.
Jeez.
I get a lot of submissions. And so
Yeah.
I obviously have to make some quick snap decisions a lot of times on these.
Mhm.
So really standing out, really showing off your hook, really showing off your voice, and getting that through and getting it clear and concise can be probably the most challenging part of being a debut author. So from that perspective, I think that's what it is.
All right. And then next question was, what's the biggest piece of advice that you can give to an incoming author or somebody who wants to be one?
Okay. I think take your time is one of the best pieces of advice I can give. Just because I think as a writer, we're very anxious to get our work out there and get it seen, especially when it's that first one. And we think like we have like this timetable that we have to be on, right? Like, I better hurry up and I better do this before someone else does it, and they might do it better.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of things that come through my box that's a little underbaked, is what I like to call it. So it's just it needed a little bit more time of development. It needed a little bit more time with like critique group, critique partners, writing partners, however, just kind of like sit with it to really bring out the nuance of the work. So I think that take your time is probably the best. And then the second piece of advice, even though you only asked me for one, I'm going to give you two,
Ooh.
is to follow submission guidelines.
Mm.
So just make sure you are giving what we're asking for. And I know that it varies across the board, right? Like it's
Right.
not consistent, so that can be tricky. But as long as you're doing your best, I think that that's really helpful. But if like we ask for a synopsis, for example, make sure you're giving us a synopsis.
And would you say that the experience and connections in the publishing world have helped you with your own writing journey?
Ooh, that's a good question. So I think that it's also still daunting to be an author and an agent at the same time. So I guess there's this misconception that because I'm an agent, I must know everyone, and it just must be so easy for me to get a publishing deal, right? But the reality is that I still had to query. I had to query my agent. I got my agent through the same process that most people do. I sent her a query to her query box, and I waited, and and I had the call just like anyone else, and all of that. So, and I've got lots of rejections as well in that case. And this book, particularly, like I didn't even write this book with any intention to even share it with her initially. I just decided one morning that I wanted to write this story. I knew Amanda. I woke up just knowing Amanda and knowing her story and wanting to tell it. And so I had no intention to share it with my agent until she was like, "So, Anne, what are you working on?" And I was like, "Oh, I have this thing." And she's like, "Well, send it to me." And now the rest is history, right? But
Yeah.
it wasn't because I knew the industry so well that I wrote that book. It was just because I just solely needed to tell that story. And so, I guess there are cases in the industry where knowing people is helpful, but I think a lot of times too, it's just also just timing and luck as well.
You
So,
mentioned on your website that you have a 2,000-day Snapchat streak, or that might be longer ever since you updated your website. So you have a 2,000-day Snapchat streak with your niece, and you mentioned your niece earlier. She kind of got you interested in writing, and having a great connection with your family is just the best, especially when it's about books. In your case, does your niece or other members of your family, do they give you experiences to draw upon in your own writing? Maybe their own little bits of advice?
hmm. Well, I just looked because I was curious what our streak is, and our streak is today 2,900 days.
Woo!
So we're still going strong. We're holding out for that world record, I think, but we were beat still, but I don't know, we're still going strong. It's fun.
Yeah.
I think my niece is very supportive in what I do, and like she'll talk to me about book stuff still, even though she's much older now. It's been quite a while since she was
Mm.
that tearful teen. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if I really pull inspiration necessarily from them, but I do definitely pull inspiration from my own life and my own experiences. And I do think that I have my family's support, which I think is really important.
Yeah, definitely. And you're writing adult books, young adult books, so it can be a little bit more tricky to even if you wanted to pull information and events from younger people's lives for that. So for those who don't know, agents aren't always open for queries, meaning that they can't always accept new manuscripts all year round. I mean, just could you imagine how much work, how much reading that would be? It might sound nice, but I mean, just think 4,000 or even more emails just piled with all these submissions. Some might not even be perfect and ready for publishing yet. These agents, they have lives too, and included. So when are your queries open? When do they typically kind of open up? And how many submissions do you accept during each opening? And does it change year by year?
That's a great question. So actually, I have never closed to querying until
Oh,
last year. So last year was the first time I ever closed to querying, and I have actually been closed since last year. I
mm,
really wanted to reopen at the beginning of this year, but I wanted to catch up in my inbox. I think I have over 200 like in my maybe pile,
mm,
which is basically just queries that I want to like sit with a little bit longer. I want to take some time. I want to dig into them. I want to like kind of sit with them. And I do take a lot of time in reading them and sitting with them and pondering them and thinking about them. So it's not like I just want to quickly race through these. These are the ones I really want to sit with. So I really wanted to have those cleared out before I opened again. So this is the first time I've ever closed, and I feel terrible that I haven't opened yet. But my clients have been keeping me so busy that I just haven't had a chance to get in there and do the thing. So like I said before, I think 1 year I averaged 5,000 queries for the year. The last year, even with closing, I just missed the 4,000 query mark. So it was a lot. It's a lot of queries. I do hope to maybe be open by the summer. I think is what my goal is right now. But yeah, we'll see. We'll
fingers
see.
crossed.
But I do take submissions from different Twitter pitch events or pitch events and also conferences. So there are other ways to get into my query box.
So my next question for you is kind of a follow-up to that. So for those who are wondering, even while your submissions aren't open currently, when they do eventually open back up, what genres or themes are you really searching for in books or submissions?
I'm always looking for stories from voices that we haven't heard before or that are underrepresented in our world. So Those are something that I'm always looking for. I'm always looking for joyful stories. I love stories about girls doing amazing things. I love stories about girls doing not so amazing things. You know, I support women's rights as much as I support women's wrongs. So I do love those. What else? I mean, there's no one particular genre. I'd love to get some more adult projects in my box this year. I have a lot of really excellent kidlit authors that I love and I'm championing. So I would really, really love to get some more adult projects in my box. Um, but I'm pretty much open still to middle grade YA and some adult things. So that's it.
Yeah. Geez, you couldn't even mention John Borhock? I'm gonna tell Tom about that. So yeah, there you have it, everybody. And my next question for Anne is a bit about profanity in middle grade, or just I guess middle grade, or even kind of the crossover between middle grade and YA. So in middle school, especially, you do champion middle grade. So in middle school, I mean, I know from experience that curse words and swearing are you probably hear more of those than actual like kind words, and it's kind of sad, but that's the way that it's kind of becoming in middle school. So it can be hard as writers or authors or even like librarians and teachers to kind of champion the stories written by these authors if they have profanity in them. So it's kind of a mix of, do I want to be authentic with vocabulary like slang, but also do I want to stay clean? So what's your personal opinion on if there should be profanity, or like what the boundary is between middle grade and YA language and what should it stay as? So a lot of questions. You can just go
A
like one.
lot of questions. So, I mean, I think at the core of the question, I think you're bringing up a good point, right? Because I think I had my kids are just a little bit older than middle grade now. They're both in high school now, but they were in middle school. So I have seen middle schoolers. I know I'm like ancient, but I mean, I was also in middle school a long time ago. It was like 200 years ago. But I think language, and especially using profanity, is kind of a way for kids to start exploring and trying to understand like who they are as a person. So they do use it a lot because it's kind of taboo to do it at home, but at school you can do it around your friends because you're
Yeah.
kind of learning to like break out of that. You're trying to figure out who you are away from like the confines of like what is expected of you, especially like in from your home environment, right? So I totally understand why profanity is something that middle schoolers and high schoolers use a lot because they're still trying to like figure out what their voice is. They're playing with these words. They're playing with their language. They're trying to understand like who they are and how they fit in, right? And for me, I don't think any word is taboo, right? Like I don't censor my kids' speech at all because I feel like we have these words to express ourselves. And so we have to figure out how to do that. And sometimes the best word to express ourselves at the time is maybe not the most specific word, right?
Yeah. Don't want to like bring them up, but like.
Right. But sometimes, that good darn it, kind of thing is exactly what you're feeling, right? To help bring out those emotions. And we should never suppress our emotions, right? We should have, no matter who you are, you should be able to express your feelings, right?
Yeah.
So now in literature, right? So we're talking about putting them in print. And I think that's where we kind of almost censor ourselves a lot because we don't have a lot of profanity in middle grade books, right? That's generally the distinction when it comes to middle grade to YA. YA, it's more acceptable to have profanity in the book, but in middle grade, it is not acceptable to have profanity in books. And so that does kind of feed into that inauthenticity of a middle grade voice because, like you said, they're swearing at school, right? So I think that it can be hard, but I also think that it is important to show that you can communicate without using those words necessarily. And sometimes being more specific in your word choice can actually give you a better outcome in the end. So I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing that we're not having them in middle grade books quite yet. But I think that it might be something that will happen in the future.
Is there a middle grade book genre, or maybe even YA, that you've yet to find a client who's really dived into? And is there something that you hope to see in the future that you have not yet?
So I don't have any middle grade fantasy. I
Mhm.
have some
Oh,
stuff
really?
that's speculative, but I don't really have fantasy. So I think it would be interesting to do some fantasy. I'm also interested in diving into a little bit more middle grade horror, which
Ooh.
I am hesitant to say because horror can be tricky, but I think I would be interested in that. On the YA front, it's kind of similar. So I don't have any epic fantasies in YA either. It's a lot of contemporary. I think that's kind of where my heart kind of gears toward. Um, but I would love to probably see some more of those, and maybe even some YA horror. I think I'd be open to that, or thrillers. I don't have any of those.
Hmm. So, my final question in the interview, which kind of makes me sad because it's been a really fun interview, but this is one question that I have that I've asked every single person that I've interviewed. I've asked Tom Phillips, I've asked James Ponti, I've asked a lot of people. So, if you could be or meet any literary character, so by that I mean you could meet your favorite author, or it could be your favorite character in a book that maybe when you liked when you were little, or that you've agented. No shame in choosing one of your own that either you've had a client create or that you've created personally. So, I know it's very long-winded, but if you could be or meet any author or book character, who would it be or why? And why?
Okay. So obviously, I love pickles. So Pickles is up here. I don't know if you can see her in my video, but I have Pickles here. So I probably, if I had to pick from a middle grade book, I would definitely pick Pickles. She's definitely my favorite middle grade character. But I will have to, I'm going to have to toot one of my clients' horns. And it is an adult book, but it is an adult thriller that is coming out later this year. It's called This Girl's a Killer, and it's about a female serial killer. And
Ooh.
and the main character is Cordelia Black, and I think I would just absolutely have to have brunch with her. So that would be my choice right now. But that's a very, very, very tough question to answer.
Is Cordelia Black the serial killer or oh,
She is.
stay safe if you go to that brunch. You know, that that's probably the most interesting answer that I've ever had to that question. So, there you go. These have been great answers, they've been interesting answers, they've been quite scary answers, and they've been answers that have killed me. And maybe that Cordelia Black is also gonna end up killing you. So, besides that, and I hope you stay safe, this has been so much fun, Anne, and I'm manifesting that you're gonna discover the next new Newbery Award winner or your favorite new middle grade that's gonna be in your submissions pretty soon when they open back up. Because I have a feeling that everybody watching, you guys are sitting on some ideas. Doesn't matter how old you are, you could be 1 years old. If you know how to type and you're one and you wrote a book, then it's pretty cool. I don't think there wouldn't be an agent that wouldn't want to sign you. Or you could be 100 years old. Just write that story, get it out there, and then maybe the one and only, the legendary, the truly awesome Anne Rose might see it and might love it. So thank you for spending your Saturday talking with me today, Anne. I know it's Saturday, so you want to lounge, just not do anything. But we gotta have this. I'm very, very glad that we had this talk, and I learned a lot. I'm sure everybody else learned a lot. And let's give Anne a round of applause. Woo.
Well,
Yeah, thank
thank
you.
you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And I've had just as much fun chatting with you today, too.
Well, everybody, I know that you are all dying to learn more about Anne. So you can check out her website, which will be in the description, and you can also just check out her Twitter. Can I say Twitter or should I have to say X? I'm just gonna keep on saying Twitter.
Twitter.
Yeah, and Instagram. Those are all gonna be linked down, I think. If I remember to do that. Sometimes I don't. So I will
Okay.
this time though. I'm gonna write it down.
Okay.
So I wish we could spend more time talking about our favorite topic, which is books. But there's always next time, and until then, everybody, stay healthy. There have been like really lingering colds going around, so try and stay safe. Keep reading and keep on writing, and don't let what anybody says stop you from writing what's on your mind. And I'll see all of you in the next one. Bye.